Alright, so many people in America are unsure what the #1 U.S. cash crop is today. Some say that it's corn or wheat or some other type of vegetable. However, the #1 cash crop in the U.S. today is marijuana. So according to marijuana policy researcher John Getman, marijuana made $35.8 billion annually, which beat out the number 2 and 3 cash crops, which was corn and wheat, which had a value of $23.3 billion and $7.5 billion, which combined wasn't as much as marijuana. So today I will be informing you on why marijuana legalization would be beneficial to the American people. I will give you multiple reasons for this. First is economically, why would it improve? Second would be why prohibition has not worked. Third is why it would get rid of what's known as the gateway effect. And lastly, it show why marijuana is less dangerous than current items that are legally allowed today. So the first reason is economically. In 2005, analysis done by a visiting professor of economics at Harvard University states that replacing marijuana prohibition with a system of legal regulation would save approximately $7.7 billion in government expenditures on prohibition enforcement. That's about $7.7 billion that we could use to try and crack down on harder drugs that isn't marijuana. And he also goes on to say that revenue from taxation of marijuana sales would generate as much as $6.2 billion per year if marijuana were taxed like alcohol or tobacco. This would also help with the California unemployment rate, which is currently at 12.2%. You may know that California currently has many medical marijuana dispensaries. Now, if marijuana is to become legalized, there would be more of a need for these dispensaries and would in turn create more jobs for California. So my next reason deals with prohibition. According to marijuana policy researcher John Getman, despite intensive eradication efforts, domestic marijuana production has increased tenfold over the last 25 years, from 2.2 million pounds in 1981 to 22 million pounds in 2006, which is according to federal government estimates. So this shows that even through their valiant efforts, the government has failed to stop the growth of marijuana. Prohibition very often does not work and can even usually worsen the problem. A clear example of this is back in 1990 when the prohibition of alcohol was induced. And the problem that ensued was first, many underground liquor clubs known as speakeasies popped up, and this was somewhere around 30,000 to 100,000 in a place just like New York, which was like near like 5 times as many liquor establishments that were there, so it made it even worse of a problem. Then it led to racketeering and law enforcement officials, and actually it was first the mafia became involved in this because they would bootleg the alcohol from suppliers and into these cities, and then came the racketeering, and also led to the creation of even stronger liquor, because they would have to transport this, so it would make more sense for them to make a stronger percentage of alcohol than beer or wine, so they make like moonshine, which has a much bigger content of alcohol. So another reason that marijuana should be legalized is that it will get rid of what is known as the gateway effect. Marijuana is often referred to as the gateway drug, or even the stepping stone to harder drugs. It will get rid of this because if you make it legal, you'll no longer be getting the drug from illegal dealers, who are usually the people that encourage you to try other drugs because they are the ones who are selling them. However, you would get it from marijuana clinics that that ones that currently they have for medicinal purposes. So I am also proof that the gateway theory is not true, because I have tried marijuana, but I've never been tempted to try any other types of drugs or harder drugs such as that. So my last reason is marijuana should also be legalized because it is safer than some things that are currently legal today, such as alcohol and tobacco. According to drugwarfacts.com, there is approximately 435,000 tobacco-related deaths and about 85,000 alcohol deaths annually. However, the number of marijuana-related deaths recorded ever is 0. So it is also impossible to ever overdose on marijuana. You can die from overdoses such as alcohol, caffeine, medications, or maybe even water. So it would take somewhat about 40,000 times the amount of THC that it takes for you to be intoxicated by it for you to fatally die from it. So an example of this, say you take 3 hits for you to get high from marijuana, it would take somewhere around 120,000 hits for it to kill you. So in conclusion, I've given you multiple reasons as to why marijuana should be legalized. Some of these are economical, why it currently doesn't work, how it would get rid of the gateway effect, and also why it's safer than some legal products today. So hopefully through this speech, you're more informed about this subject and maybe even change your view on the topic. Thank you.
Kimberly, what did you think?
He had a good intro. He had a good attentive driver in the beginning. He made good claims, and each claim had a good supporting detail. He did a good job on citing his sources. He really didn't look out to the audience, and he had a good conclusion.
All right, I agree with several of those points. I thought that the introduction was fine and the conclusion was really pretty solid because you have all the organizational stuff down there. On the content issues, I think that you've got a little bit of data here, but it's not going quite as far as it needs to. There's some stuff about cost, for instance, that are okay. But it's not really put into much context, and I think you could develop an argument there. The tax revenue thing seems really conclusionary, and I think you need to develop that point as well. The jobs claim is just like it's just a claim. There's no proof on it whatsoever, so I think that that's a little underdeveloped. The analogy to Prohibition, I think, is an interesting one that could be developed more, but you get sidetracked talking about some things that went on during Prohibition. I don't get any source citations on this. It sounds like you're wandering around a little bit on the subject. The connection to marijuana I don't think is completely explained, and your inference here in the long run is not very clear. On the last issue, on the gateway issue, I think that you are relying primarily on your personal experience there and the assumption that it's a contact-based issue as opposed to a chemical-based issue or a behavior-based issue, and I think that that's a little bit problematic. It's going to be a hit-or-miss thing on that, so I thought that that point was a bit underdeveloped. There's some causality claims on deaths that I think are largely underdeveloped, but you do have some reasonable arguments on the safety issues, and there's a value argument to be made on this particular point about whether or not other things that are known to be dangerous and are not prohibited, and marijuana is not nearly as dangerous and is prohibited. Is that really an appropriate decision? Well, I think you need to have a value argument about that, but we don't really get into that discussion. The presentation points, you tend to look down quite a bit. You're reading a lot, but you do look up occasionally, and you do seem to try to engage the audience. So you need to be a little bit more engaging during the presentation. Your voice, I thought, was okay. Occasionally sing-song at the beginning. Like I said, I thought that you had a good summary and exit, too, so I'd agree with Kimberly about that comment, too. All right, thank you.